to everyday folks who are using both of their feet to walk around as well. Additionally, looking at Monroe Center, so slight improvement in the overall score for Monroe Center from 1.3 to 1.26. Weeds and debris still being high on the scale here, and you can sort of see in the pictures accumulation of dead leaves well before fall, which is unfortunate, and then some of the infrastructure needing just a little bit better care, but it did improve even from last year, from last year, so 0.2 improvement. And then looking at Ottawa Avenue, and Ottawa Avenue was once, again, one of those streets we didn't have data from for last year, and I'm not sure why, but overall saw Ottawa Avenue actually stayed the same from 23 to 25, so the average score between both of these years was 1.29. So seeing some areas get a little bit better, some areas get a little bit worse. Specifically, green space was called out as being worse, stains and gum being a little bit worse in 2025 than it was in 2023. I'm not sure if that means people are smoking less and chewing more gum, or not really sure why the gum is such a big deal. But identified some issues where we had some plantings get vandalized and we didn't get those taken care of in a timely fashion. Seeing some of this porous pavement collect debris and dust and weeds and things like that, and needing to get our teams dispatched to take care of those. And then this actually isn't Ottawa, this is Fountain Street, but it was noticeable from Ottawa, so seeing pretty significant issues with the sidewalk there, pitting, gravel kind of being used to fill in, but being very loose and kind of getting all over the place. And then last, identified South Division, so a slight increase, 0.04 from last year, but mostly seeing things improve, especially weeds, debris got better, even though it's still scored pretty high on the list. It got significantly better than it did in 2024. Seeing things like cigarette butts, though, get worse. And so identifying those areas where we can find maybe we need to add some infrastructure or amenities to collect more cigarette butts so they're not ending up on the ground, or maybe we need to just focus our efforts a little bit differently in South Division than we have been in the years past. And again, seeing sort of these tree wells with weeds in them here and here and here, and addressing those. And then again, some sort of sidewalk issues where we have several layers of varying heights on the sidewalk that we see as an issue kind of going forward. That's a pretty quick overview. Ultimately, we'll be using this data to provide the ambassadors with a little bit refined scope. We've already been working with them to address many of the issues that we've identified. And one thing that we identified this year that we'll be implementing for streetscape assessments the next round we do them, will be an accessibility piece. We're going to start looking at the actual accessibility of the sidewalks and trying to measure that as well, in addition to sort of the cleanliness and the beautification. We're not primarily responsible for the accessibility piece, but we are a strong partner with the city, and so I think having that data from us will be helpful as we look at streetscape priorities and trying to mitigate some of those issues. Like I said, I went through that pretty fast, but I'm happy to take any questions that you all might have.
Melvin, can you remind me, so are we primarily using the results from this assessment just internally to work with the team on that, or is this published anywhere for public knowledge or consumption?
It's a great question. We haven't traditionally published this publicly. Say that 5 times fast. We have talked about that, and I think it is sort of a priority, might be a little strong word. It is sort of a goal of mine to get it out there. I think broadly, primarily we've used it as an assessment, like an internal assessment tool to gauge the work of the ambassadors, to gauge the work of the improvement district, and really try to focus and update and enhance our services.
And then, sorry, I have a lot of questions, but then if we have and can you also remind me, this assessment is there's other contributors to like a survey from this? This is not just internal, we've done the assessment ourselves, so we haven't asked for the input.
Yes, so each of these assessments here, this data is gathered by a group of staff as well as volunteers, so we typically do them in groups of like 10 to 15.
Got it.
But it's predominantly stakeholders from the district, like ratepayers, business owners, residents, things like that.
So I guess my question to that is, at the very least, maybe being able to share these results with that group that was involved in kind of putting together the initial assessment, just to kind of understand what the outcome is.
Yeah, absolutely.
Melvin, I appreciate you sharing this. I'd love to have a copy of it, maybe with like your 2 cents. What you just shared today was really helpful because this is something over the summer I've heard a lot about.
Sure.
I keep asking people like, are you telling me because you want me to talk to the city and DPI, or are you telling them too? And a lot of folks, I think, would benefit from hearing that you've got this information, you're taking action on it. Here's what you're looking at, and continuing to over communicate.
Yeah.
Because if folks feel like they're like just yelling into a void, that's where frustration grows.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I know we still do better than most all communities, but like, how do we keep moving forward? I'd love to hear from you, like on a global scale. What do you think's working really well, and like, where would you like to see improvements if you had a magic wand?
Oof. That's a great question, and I'd probably have to give a little thought to that. But I mean, I think I'm a little unfair. I think our district is very clean, but if I'm walking around, I'm also like, it's very dirty. We have to clean it, So, I'd have to give some thought to that about where we could make improvements if we had a magic wand. But it's certainly something to think about. And we can certainly put together a little bit more comprehensive report about this, and I'd be happy to get that out to everybody.
Thank you.
Paul's question. Yes.
All these are great questions, and I think mine are similar to what the other members are talking through. How often are these done? How many streets? I know you listed 3 or 4. And then outside of the ambassador program, some of the things like the cement or the bricks, does that get reported to 311? And what's response time? Things like that.
Let's see. We do 5 streets. Typically, it's our highest pedestrian activity streets. So it's Bridge Street, Monroe Center, Ionia, Ottawa, and South Division. I have ambitions to expand it beyond that. I think for me personally, it's a little bit of a bandwidth issue, but we're hoping to correct that. We typically do these right now once a year. My next immediate goal is to start doing them at least twice a year. I'm kind of aiming for, we typically do like a post-art prize, pre-art prize somewhere in there, and then I'd ideally like to probably tack spring on to the assessment calendar. And then I think your other question was about the issues that aren't ours. Are we reporting them to 311? Yes.
Okay.
I don't personally track the response times. I put them into 311. Sometimes through the ambassador portal, sometimes just directly into 311. It kind of just depends. But so I couldn't tell you on the response time. But
That's great. Thanks.
I will tell you, and sorry, Kate, not to call you out, but
I don't do the work.
this particular street, Fountain here, has been reported a few times over the last few years. So sometimes response times vary pretty wildly from not addressed at all to sometimes being addressed pretty quickly.
Yeah, okay.
Great.
No, maybe just 2 things to add on to some of the stuff that's brought up. One is that there is also a survey that goes out to ratepayers throughout the district.
Yep.
So a lot of similar questions get asked for people's personal experience. So if it's not necessarily covered in the streetscape assessment, it may be revealed in that. And then the ambassadors also track a lot of data when they're out in the field, and so we have a couple of different looks at things that might need attention. So this is a snapshot, and I think it's probably the most detailed one, but there are other things that we can use to sort of reference in terms of prioritizing improvement.
And the note on the survey, it just went out this week. So if you haven't had a chance to take it, please do. If you need the link to do that, we can send it out to you. But and that'll be open through at least the end of the year.
And I would just, as a final thought also, just to reiterate, I do think that there is a value to bringing this information along with like Josh said, yes, we hear you, we see you. This is what we're working on, and this is what we are seeing. I think that goes a very long way, and along with maybe just a follow-up of some of the vital reports information. I think we are the owners here collectively of some amazing data and also doing great work. And so even whether it's going to business associations, working with the chamber, but having outlets to report back to our downtown neighbors and community just of some of the work. I know there's a process to that, but maybe just keeping some thoughts along.
Certainly. And I will note too, we are, thanks to Lauren over here who's taking minutes, we are working to actually get the ambassadors to do a round of these
Oh, great.
streetscape assessments. I think those are scheduled for later this month. I think one, it will help kind of inform them the things that we are looking at in
Yeah.
terms of like when we're looking at streetscapes, when we're looking at downtown, like what are the things that I personally am picking out and looking at and sort of, picking on, so to speak. So I think, I hope rather that would be an informative opportunity for them so that they can really kind of get in my head, as much as that might be scary, to try to understand like what they should really be looking for as they're kind of out in the district as well. And so hopefully we can kind of see them sort of shift their thinking a little bit to kind of get sort of on the same page as us too. So.
Great.
Are those linked at all to performance reviews? I'm just curious if that's something that we thought about, because if it's important to us and we have a scorecard for it,
Yeah.
then it should be important to the ambassadors and their daily routines, like annual goals, like improvement, better.
Yeah. I don't know that this particular data is linked to the ambassadors' performance reviews. We're not involved in that process. That's a third-party contractor responsibility. It is something we sort of gauge as we're looking at potential new contractors or having discussions about increases in ambassador pay or overall contract value, things like that.
And we just renewed the contract with Block by Block.
We
right?
did. Yep.
Okay. So it would seem like maybe in future versions, we want to share with them some of that data,
Here's
right?
what
Like,
we're
hey,
seeing.
things
Yes.
got a little worse
Yes.
on Ottawa. I'm just picking on Ottawa. But
Yeah,
it
yeah,
got
yeah.
a little worse on Ottawa, and we'd like that to become, yes, they're employed by Block, but ultimately it's
Yep.
the DID and DGRI that are paying for them.
Yeah, and this does get shared with Rebecca, the account manager, so she
Okay.
gets a version of this that kind of highlights some of the
Okay.
things we're seeing, and then she and I collectively kind of craft a plan to address those issues if they haven't already been.
I like the idea of the ambassadors doing a self-assessment
Mm-hmm.
too,
Yeah.
of the streets, and then they get a sense for, okay, these are all things that
Yeah.
that we're looking for.
The lens.
Yeah. Great. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Next item for discussion is going to be our DID reauthorization back on the docket.
All right, very exciting times. So really quick, if you're not familiar, we have to reauthorize the improvement district every so often. The last reauthorization that we did was at 3 years. So we are coming to the end of that 3 years at the end of our current fiscal year. So we'll need to put in the work to reauthorize the district for another set period of time. Typically what you're seeing up here on the screen is what our timeline has been for getting the finalized plan to City Commission and marching it through the process for approval and recommendation at the City Commission level. So looking to have a finalized plan no later than February from this board so that we can begin the process of taking it to City Commission in March, getting public hearings set, going through those steps, and then having the commission approve the plan in April, getting assessment notices mailed, having the roll open for inspection, and then ultimately the roll being confirmed in late July, and then ideally getting bills mailed out sometime in September for collection in late September and October and sort of beyond that. So that's sort of the timeline that we're aiming for. It's the timeline that we've done for the last several reauthorizations, so nothing's really changing there. Where we really need to spend our time thinking about is sort of these questions I have, and then anything else that's a priority to the board. But really, one thing that's kind of always a note is expansion of the improvement district. So if you look at the picture there, the blue district is the improvement district, highlighting 3 areas that continue to come up as potential opportunities for expansion. So Monroe North, which has, I think, long been on the list and seems to be gaining some sort of traction, or at least being talked about at the Monroe North Business Association level. The west side, predominantly along Bridge Street and sort of that surrounding area, and then with the amphitheater being built south on Market there, that being an area that we may want to consider expansion as well. Other things to know are there changes to the scope or services, whether they're removing things or adding things to the overall scope of the improvement district that we should be considering? What's the term of reauthorization? So the last one I mentioned was 3 years. Prior to that, we did a series of 1-year reauthorizations based primarily around the uncertainty that came from COVID and coming out of COVID. I think We are capped at doing 5 years based on what I know. We've talked about doing a 5-year before, and there has been some trepidation around that, around this table. So certainly 3-year remains a good option, and I will just add a little note that reauthorizing does require a pretty heavy lift, even if we're not making a lot of changes administratively from our team. And then is there anything else that this board thinks that we should consider while we have the opportunity to sort of redraft our improvement district plan?
I make a motion to reauthorize every 5 years.
So heard.
Wow, there you go. Yeah.
I'm happy with not
Yes.
1 year, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Well, as a reminder, the biggest, I think the last, did we just determine if it was the last one we did or 2 times ago, was one of the biggest changes we made, which was the length of reauthorization plus the nonprofit, adding the nonprofits, was that
Yeah,
it?
and the residential, that was the last one.
And the residential, yep. Yep, and did we have boundary changes at that one as well?
We've not changed the boundary. So the last
Okay.
reauthorization we made, probably our biggest changes in a long time. So we added residential parcels
Yeah.
to the assessment roll. We got nonprofit parcels back on the assessment
Yeah.
roll. They had fallen off. And the district thing you're probably remembering is we combined the snowmelt districts into a singular
fair.
snowmelt district
Okay.
for just operational and administrative purposes, just for better maintenance and operations of that piece. Is there anything I'm missing on that too? I feel like that's the list. Sorry, there was one thing I'm missing. We did also devise a mechanism to build in variable rate increases in the plan based on the state of Michigan's inflation rate. Previously, the improvement district had set fixed increases per year that were not always the best mechanism to do that. And so now we've sort of built that variable piece into the plan. So apologies.
Sorry. I was just going to ask if the amphitheater would be voluntary, if we incorporated that part into the district, if that was
It would.
Yeah.
it'd be.
Yep.
So it would.
Oh,
It'll
it's
be
a-
owned by the CAA. So
That's what I thought, okay. I just wanted to confirm.
Certainly, all of these expansions would require discussions with the areas that they're moving into.
Yeah,
The CAA, Monroe North, their businesses up there. The West Side CIA would be implicated a little bit in the improvement district expansion over here too. So certainly not to say that we can't look at those or shouldn't, but yeah, just because we say like, yes, we want Monroe North, it doesn't mean it's going to happen.
Do we have to do it when we're reauthorizing? Is that when you would only do
Yeah.
an expansion, is during reauthorization? So if they come to us in 26 or 27, I should say, we would have to wait?
Well, we could
Or just
decide
do
to,
a new
we could
We can
do a-
amend, right?
We can do a new
Okay,
reauthorization.
I got you.
We can reauthorize whenever we want.
Okay.
But an amendment would be equal to a whole reauthorization, is that correct? Even if we went in with a 3-year and then made a change next year, it's a whole reauthorization,
Yeah.
okay? What you're saying is a heavy lift, is what I'm hearing, okay, got it.
So if we expand into those areas, which I certainly would support, I think there would be a necessary increase in the ambassador program, so an increase in that cost too, right? And so when would this potentially go into effect, and that, how does that impact the turnaround for our budget?
Sure. That's a great question. So yeah, if we expanded the improvement district, I think knowing that expansion of the district would require like an expansion of ambassador services, we would want to make sure that the area that we're expanding into can financially support an expansion of the ambassador program. That had historically been a challenge with the Monroe North District, for example, with nonprofits and residents not being on the assessment roll. It wasn't financially viable for us to expand north. That calculus has changed based on the changes we've made to the improvement district. Ideally, these services would go into effect July 1 when the new plan is into effect. The way that the ambassador services are split between the improvement district and the DDA carries their portion of the ambassador program for the first several months while the improvement district works to gather its assessment dollars and then sort of takes over payment after that. So there would be some financial implications, but I think based on the way that we currently divide those up, we would be able to manage it. We'd have to look at that to be certain, but my gut tells me that I think it would be doable.
So is there a formal process that's already in place for expansion? Like, do you need to gather petition signatures? Do you need to have open meetings for public comment?
So, yeah, in the past, we've typically done like open meetings. We've gone to business association meetings. We've called our own meetings, things like that. When we did the residential expansion, for lack of a better term, we held 10 to 15 meetings, I think, going to neighborhood association meetings. We held our own meetings here at the DGRI office. We also went to buildings and had meetings there. So we would certainly want to engage and would engage folks in those areas to understand if this is something they wanted, espouse the benefits of the improvement district, but also help them understand the real costs that come along with it too.
And then is expansion only a reality during reauthorization, or can you do that in the interim?
They're only possible during a reauthorization.
Okay.
Okay.
So just a couple thoughts and questions. I think just technically, I don't know, this could be Captain Obvious to everybody else around there, but the west side, would that overlap with the west side
CIA.
CIA?
It would. Well, it depends on how we drew the boundaries, but yes, I think we would.
So they have perennially been interested in trash can pickup, which is something they can't pay for, so it might be worth a conversation.
Sure.
There's been some
Agreed.
interest there. Just with my city hat on, we are putting together, our thoughts around river cleanliness as we do the Lower Reach project and have the trail. And, if you go out there now, you see a lot of trash buildup on the sides of the river. I'm expecting that both the city and DGRI will get increasing complaints about cleaning up that, so just food for thought. I think we're both gonna have to think about how are we actually gonna meet people's expectations.
Sure.
And it will be difficult to likely be as responsive if we don't have a tool like ambassadors, regardless of how we think about funding that. I think the expectations will be there as we invite more people to that corridor. So food for thought on that. And then the other thing to, just again with my city hat on, we have been funding through, the city has been funding through ARPA allocation, program with Mel Trotter for personal property storage for people that are living unhoused or living in shelters or living somewhere else where they don't feel safe, keeping their personal belongings. So we have a program with Mel's. The ARPA dollars are running out at the end of 2026. And traditionally, we use federal funds for those kinds of programs. We have not used general taxpayer dollars to support nonprofit and housing, human services type things. We rely on our federal pass-through dollars. As we sit today, we don't expect those dollars to increase in any way. So if we wanted to keep that storage program going, we would have to find a way to reallocate amongst a whole lot of other services. So we are looking for partners to help us sustain that program. We think it is very valuable, particularly downtown, to help cut down on the amount of property that's in the right of way. It gives us an alternative when we are enforcing our personal property ordinances in parks and streets and things, to be able to say there are alternatives to dragging stuff around with people everywhere. So just food for thought. We're going to be looking for partners, and if we do a 3-year reauthorization, maybe build in some flexibility there.
What's the annual amount on that one?
Yeah.
200,000.
On your River Point, Kate, I was just for the benefit of the group, there is a operations maintenance plan being developed for the entire river corridor, so not just in downtown, that will start to quantify what some of the maintenance needs will be, so that'll sort of inform, I think, the next steps in that conversation, and what tools may or may not be available to help.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. I was going to mention that, and just to add a note that I sit on that, around that table as part of that group, trying to figure that stuff out too. So, good connection between the work that O&M group is doing and the improvement district.
When you're talking about pool of partners, what is the pool of partners available to you?
Say that again?
Yeah, I didn't hear the
The
question.
pool, where is the pool of partners that you are looking to see?
The
to
pool of
participate?
partners.
Oh, we're just starting that conversation now. So Anybody who wants to
So,
help?
anyone and everyone.
You're taking volunteers at this point?
All right, all right, all right.
Probably the county, probably.
So if I wanted to contribute, I can just see you as
Sure. Absolutely.
So what, at this point in the process, as we start to consider all of these things, what direction or guidance do you need from this body at this point in order to come back with a recommendation for how we're going to move forward?
So I think what we kind of need now is, so just to kind of run through these questions, are we interested in expanding in any of these areas?
Yes.
If yes, we'll have some due diligence to do.
Okay.
Are there any changes to scope or services that we want to make? Like, do we want to consider the
Trash
request from
cans.
the city
Oh.
to do the storage lockers? Or do we want to remove services from our scope?
I think Peter's got that one covered.
Oh, cool, yeah,
He's
that's, it
donating.
sounded like it. Okay, thank you, Peter. And if there's anything else we need to investigate, and I think for us, the idea would be to do some due diligence around these things, come back in December with sort of a short list of like, here's what we heard, is this what you think we want to be going after, yes or no? And then I think once that list is sort of finalized, we'll determine how much extra work we'll need to do, whether or not we need to form a subcommittee for this, and kind of just forge our direction forward from there, so.
And for those that may have been involved in the past, we did have our previous reauthorization, or maybe 2 times ago, we did have a subcommittee that was involved
Yep.
in order to make some of those changes, which was it was a process, but I felt like it was a good process. Any specific responses to some of these, I guess, specific questions? I heard, I think from some that have spoken up just about that, I think expansion of the district would be a consideration.
Yeah, I would support that. I think all 3 of those circles on the map make sense.
Or at least understanding
At least have
how
the
that,
discussions.
yes,
Yep.
and I would say that with the expansion of that, I mean, I think that, you know, as far as the term of reauthorization, I think a lot of that's gonna depend on when some of these projects come to fruition, or when we need to consider, looking at those areas.
I think the term should be minimum of 3. We can always do a new reauthorization midstream if we had to incorporate a new area or change scope or something. But it seems, I mean, it's a
Every year, remember,
Jess
we
has done it.
just finish it.
And you start all over
You've done
again.
it. I was
Yes,
on one at one
Yes.
point. It is a
it's a process,
process
yeah.
to get it done.
I think that's a fair statement.
The West Side's talking about switching from a CIA to a bid.
Oh,
So it would make sense to, I don't know how it all works, but if they're thinking about switching to a bid to be able to pay for all this stuff.
Adding.
Right.
They would add,
They would do it.
so it would be in addition to?
It'd be similar to the DDA.
Yeah.
Oh, so you don't
Bid
actually
situation.
rewrite over the CIA?
No, no.
Okay.
You can layer.
Allowed to do different.
Would that bid then be able to support the trash pickup that she was talking, or even support adding Black Bible, or the services, just like we did up in
Yeah,
East
so
Hills?
if they had
Or
their
East
own bid, we would
Uptown?
not be able to expand our improvement district over their
Oh, got
bid
it.
area. They could, in theory, contract with us to get block by block services. I tell you,
Oh.
they're probably not big enough to get their own services, at
Got
least
it.
through block by block. So that's how that's how Uptown funds its ambassadors, is they have enough money to pay for what they can pay for, but they use our contract
Got it.
services to expand into the Uptown area, so we could certainly look at something like that too.
So then it would almost make sense for them to not add a bid and become a part of the did.
Maybe.
In theory.
Maybe. It depends on what their, I think, overall goals with the improvement
Have you
district
talked with
are.
Monica Hall at all
I've
about
not.
this? Okay.
We can.
That might be part of the diligence,
That'd be
You
yeah.
probably need to add a bid in order to have money that could be spent on block by block. Generally can't spend CIA dollars on that.
They can't, yeah, that's like
It's
for the
different colors
airplane.
of money.
Yep.
The other thing we also will evaluate is making sure, and this comes up all the time, is just making sure our service within the DID is not diluted
Yes.
based on any
Yes.
expansion, or so we don't want to relocate ambassadors from the working downtown
Sure.
to West Side or wherever.
Correct.
That's part of the analysis we'll have to
Yep.
make sure that we're.
Does it make sense to approach the expansion areas from a monetary standpoint? Like, we know who would pay what, and or at least we can estimate. if we, like the amphitheater as an example, that area, if they're voluntary, that makes that a little bit harder to add, we're gonna have to add an ambassador for that area, clearly, right?
Right.
Because that's a big area, a lot to do down there. So to me, there's a monetary piece of this too, like a budget. Like,
Yeah.
hey, would it make financial sense to do that? Monroe North, I think, makes sense with the residential component
Yep.
in there now.
So that's a good question. So the way that we've traditionally approached this is that's the first thing we look at is like, can an area that we're looking to expand even support the
Yeah,
services that we
self-sustained.
intend to do that? Because to
Yeah.
Tim's point, we don't want to dilute services.
Right.
So, if, to keep, Monroe North is a pretty large area, and if we, depending on how we draw those boundaries up there, we wouldn't want to say like, okay, they can support one ambassador 3 days a week, but they want 5 days a week services. Like, that means we're carrying,
Yeah.
the rest of the district is carrying 2 days a week that it wasn't before.
Correct.
So we would want to make sure that whatever area we're looking to expand into can financially support whatever level of service that we are able to provide there. And so, like I said, historically, Monroe North has not been able to carry services because of the way
Right.
the property makeup is up there. But that changed when we added nonprofits back and residential properties to the role. So I think that calculus is a lot different than it was even 3 years ago.
Is that a pretty heavy lift though, for you guys to do the financial independence?
It can be, but it's not impossible.
Okay.
And
That
given
makes sense.
enough time,
Sort of.
I think we can certainly pull those things together.
Sorry, does Emily have?
Yeah, I think Emily.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Emily
He's
knows.
cautioning me about asking questions. I'm just curious. With the addition 3 years of residential, has there been any feedback to that from residents about appreciating or resistance to like the being part of that?
Yeah, I haven't heard a lot of resistance, other than the small contingent that was relatively resistant to it going in. I'll kind of lean on
Yeah.
Paul a little bit, who is our resident.
Yeah.
I am a huge supporter of it. I think
Yeah.
it's a,
Makes the experience of living downtown different.
oh yeah, absolutely. This is my backyard, so I want it to look nice too.
Yeah.
So, I speak only for myself. I think the amount of money we're spending is cheap, and I'd be willing to pay more.
Yeah.
But I think we know a good chunk of the ambassadors. They do a fantastic job, and I think they add, to the Grand Rapids experience with people coming in from Art Prize and all the other events. So, nothing but good things to say about
Yeah.
residents.
Yeah, and I think, and initially when we put that out, I think the total amount that went to each individual residential unit was pretty minimal based on the total amount, so.
Yep.
I had heard good
$120 a year, $10 a month, yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Cheaper than Netflix.
Yeah.
Much cheaper.
Cheaper than Amazon.
And we haven't raised it in the 3 years that we've had them on the roll, so.
Pretty good.
I guess I wonder, sorry, and not to overcomplicate it, because maybe this is philosophical, is it better to have the district expanded before the amphitheater is up and running, or wait and see what you truly need and have some sort of needs assessment before you go into it? I mean, maybe it doesn't matter and it's all just your own perspective, but.
Yeah, that's a good question, and one that's been asked before, which I think is why we haven't expanded that way, is because the last time we talked about this, the amphitheater was 3 years away.
Right.
And now it's 6 months
Yeah.
away.
Right.
So that's a good question. I think maybe it makes sense to let the amphitheater land and see what we need, and then I think we're either signing up to not service that area for 3 years, or knowing that we're going to have to open the reauthorization process up before whatever term we decide
Right.
to add that area back.
The amphitheater is in 2 years, that's the.
The amphitheater is in spring.
This year.
26.
When we started the current reauthorization process, the amphitheater was a discussion, but because it was so far away, we felt like it didn't make sense to expand the DID at the time.
I think
At least that's where the board came.
sorry to keep coming back to the monetary side, but I think if you look at what
There's a
the
living into it.
assessment is, you just match services to it.
Yeah.
And then the question is, are the services taking
So-
care of what we want to?
Yeah, we go.
It's,
Sorry, hang on a
Pretty
second.
aligned, like the start of a new term is pretty aligned with the amphitheater, but that would be one reason I would say for not extending a 5-year term is because it would allow for a check and adjust or a re-evaluation after sort of living into that new
Sure.
reality for 2 years or 3 years, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
And then I wanted to make sure, Mike, you're on record for what you said too. What was your
Yeah, I
comment?
think it's, if you do the math and you
Yeah.
know what the district would pay in terms of the assessments that would come in for the district, I think you match the services to it, so you don't dilute what our core
Yep.
is. And then at that point, if we added it, you could come back in a year and say, okay, the services that are there, that match what you pay in. If you want more services, we're gonna have to consider something different, right?
Yeah. Certainly, and that's one approach we have sort of looked at with Monroe North is depending on how we draw those boundaries, what ends up inside of that district can help determine what gets paid, and then like, yes, I had to make sure this was legal, but yes, we can provide a different level of service to that part of the district based on that.
Okay. I think it makes sense
Sounds
to
like we might need a
explore.
subcommittee though, to maybe get you faster response if you start to dig into this stuff.
I think we can sort of make that determination in December. I think we'll have enough work to do between now and the December meeting, and we can sort of come back with a little bit more information about this, and I think we can make a decision then.
So you're going to be taking what you heard us say today back and then come back in December with that recommendation
Yeah.
of next steps?
Yep.
And then we'll also have a little bit more data from the survey that's out.
Yes.
So it's not just isolated to us internally or the board, we can have a little bit
Yeah.
as well.
And it'll give us time to have conversations with the West Side CIA,
Yes.
the CAA, Monroe North folks, who may say like, no, we don't want you up here.
Yeah, fair. Any last items for input for Melvin and team before they take this back?
I think the comment about the scope expansion into the storage lockers, I would just say that $200,000 would be 20% of our budget. That seems like a pretty heavy lift for us to consider. While it would align with clean and safe, I don't know that it's something that would be handled here.
Sure.
At the DID, in my opinion. I'm sure there has to be a solution, but I don't know that it's something that the DID needs to expand the scope here. Based on the stakeholders, I just don't know how we take that on.
I know.
Okay.
Was that a, I thought that was an off the cuff kind of remark about,
Yeah, it was just something
was.
to consider. We're gonna be looking
It-
for partners. We're not
Yeah.
expecting anybody to take it over
Okay.
100%.
Yeah.
But
It
to
wasn't-
consider, the ambassadors partner with us now, so they may
Yeah.
have some insight into if we didn't have that,
Sure.
what would be the burden that falls to them? Does it make sense to add something to their contract? Does it make sense to continue a conversation but build in some flexibility around it?
she didn't want us to.
But yeah, it wasn't, it's just a looking ahead for the
All
next
right.
few years.
Thank you, Kate.
All right. Final comments for Melvin? All right. Okay, let's move on to the president and CEO report. Tim, thank you, Melvin.
Thank you. I'm gonna get you all out of here on time, so I'm gonna buzz through these things real quick. Want to make sure everyone's in the loop. We are internally, or I should say organizationally, we're gonna update the GR Forward Master Plan. That 10-year plan is just about at its 10-year mark, so updating that. We put an RFQ out on the street in August. We are reviewing those with a small subcommittee. Paul sits on that currently. We'll make some recommendations to fiduciary boards coming up in either November or December with an eye to get started on the work, likely in early '26. We'll make sure that you're in the loop on that. We'll also be building a bigger steering committee and would like to get some folks from the DID on that, so just stay tuned for that, and we'll keep you posted as that moves along. Wanted to highlight a couple housing projects that came through to the DDA last month for approval. One is down on Sheldon Avenue. So that's Division, that's Wealthy, so southern boundary for sure in downtown, but new housing unit on that vacant lot. Proposing to add 26 new units. And then the Ledger building, kitty corner from us here, is proposing to do a office conversion, so converting this portion of the building into about 36 units. Still a little ways to go on both of those for financing and MSHDA approval, but nonetheless, they have gotten some of their local approvals and will be at City Commission, I think, coming up here in the fall. So exciting stuff to see there. A couple of new businesses to highlight. Art Rat Studio down on Division in Weston. They got a grant from the DDA to expand their storefront. So they'll be taking over a vacant space on Division Avenue. And then the Grand Rapids Game Show Experience is going to take over the old Bella Bridal. They're going to serve alcohol, I should say, but then they're also going to, it's sort of an experiential opportunity to go in. You can play like historic game shows in there with your team or your friends. So if you want to play Family Feud, Wheel of Fortune, Jeopardy, they'll set it up for you. You can go in and have a whole lot of fun. So keep an eye out for that. I think they're hoping to be open early 26, but there'll be more announcements on that. Also wanted to highlight on the retail side of things, these cards are at your seats. The Downtown Retail Incubation Program. This is down at the Arts Marketplace, so down at Studio Park. Opportunity to bring in entrepreneurs to sort of learn the ropes in terms of setting up businesses. We're accepting applications now through the end of the year. First cohort will launch in early 26. So if you know anyone that's interested, point them our way or send them to the, there's a link on this that you can use. Quite a few groundbreakings since we all last met over the summer, mostly around riverfront projects. So this was down at the amphitheater adjacent river trail that's being developed, and this is over at Oxford Trail. Those were just in the past few weeks. We also cut the ribbon or popped the bubbles for Lion Square a couple weeks ago. Just great to see that space officially open. Did want to highlight on Lion Square, there are some more things to come next year, one of which will be a new projection mapping show. So we'll be able to do weekly, maybe nightly shows out there highlighting not only the beautiful space, but also some of the historic facades. And all of these are part of the broader Grand River Greenway, which I think you all know about. But when finally built, we'll connect Lowell all the way out to the lakeshore. And then lastly, great summer event season again. So Art Prize just wrapped up on October 4. Return to the River was a huge hit. Hopefully you all got to come down and enjoy that. And then also wanted to highlight Sunset Cinemas down at Studio Park, which was also a great success. So overall, obviously a lot of stuff going on in the summer, but just wanted to highlight our September numbers were slightly above 2019. Ironically below 2024, but nonetheless above where we were in 2019. And thanks to all the work of the DID and a lot of others in downtown.
Awesome.
That's it.
Thank you for sharing. Any questions for Tim or comments? Thanks for sharing. Okay, we'll open it up for any public comment. Okay, hearing none, we'll move forward. Any board member discussion? Final thoughts? Announcements?
I've got a quick question. Where are things with the improvement next to Van Andel?
The alley.
Yeah.
Currently going through a little bit of redesign, but with the DDA has budget for construction to start next spring.
Oh, great.
Yeah, assuming everything stays on track.
Yep.
Mark, anything to add on that?
Sounds good. Correct.
So the
Any other questions, comments, announcements? Okay, we'll go ahead and adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Melvin asking me in his phone, just look on the board, on the board website.
Yeah.
See when terms were up.
Oh, yeah.
Mine's up at the end of the year.
Oh, yours is up?
Yeah. And so we